Well, welcome back to another Coffee and a Chat. And today's is for men. So, especially if you're a husband or a father or hope to be one day, I want to share with you something that happened this morning and the impact it had on me. So, I woke up this morning and the sun hadn't come up yet. And I reached over for my husband, as I often do. I sleep best if I can at least be holding his hand. I don't know. It's how I am. So when he's not in the bed, I'm usually quite aware of it. So I woke up and yeah, he wasn't there. And so, usually he's waking up and I'm not there because I couldn't sleep or whatever. And I just thought, well, I wonder if everything's okay and what's going on. I got up, and was kind of waking up. And so I thought, well, I'll just go see what's going on. And so I came out of the bedroom and came around the corner of the living room, and there, in the wee hours of the morning, still dark outside with a light on over the table, my husband was sitting at our little kitchen table with his Bible open, his glasses on, spending time with the Lord. I want you to know that stirred my heart like nothing else could stir it. And I thought about, I don't want to interrupt him. And I started to just kind of, tiptoe back into the bedroom. But by then he'd already was looking up at me over the top of his glasses. And he, and he goes, "You okay?" And I go, "Yeah. Oh, I'm okay. I just woke up and you weren't in the bed and I wanted to make sure you were okay." And he goes, "Oh, I am." And I'm like, "I know. But do you have any idea how much more I just fell in love with you?" Do you have any idea what it means to me to get up and find you pressing in with God? And so, he kind of, scooted some things over so that I would come sit down with him. And so we began to talk. And then, he had me open my Bible and he's like, "Let's go to," where did he have us go? I think it was Proverbs 10. And so we read and we shared and had a wonderful time together and talked about all kinds of things that, how the Lord has blessed us, what he's done for us, what he is doing for us. And we're in a period of transition right now, and there's some unknowns that are looming over us, but it's all very exciting because we know that God has a plan and he is directing us in our lives. But the thing I wanted to talk to you guys about today is, there's a lot of things men do to be a man. Some of them, they have this fantastic job and make all this money to support their family, and some, maybe they're a successful athlete or something. I don't know, because none of that stuff matters to me. Maybe they're going to the gym all the time, so they're in great shape and taking care of their health and doing this and that and all. But I'm telling you, from this old woman that wasn't always an old woman, catching her husband with God, that is amazing. That is the most attractive thing, and really, really melts my heart. I'm not the only one out there that feels like that. There's other women too. And I used to be one that just dreamt about it, that longed for it, that wanted that. So I was married once before. I was married for 36 years. I was married to a man who, he was more of a boy when we got married. We were pretty young. But he, was, God this, God that, because that's kind of what it was going to take to win my affections. And because I wasn't interested in, I wouldn't have married somebody that I didn't think was a Christian and all this stuff. But you know what? I wasn't very picky about it. And I didn't take the time to really get to know him like I should and to know what all was going on, because it wasn't true. And over the years, there were times when, I do believe that, that he had times when maybe God really mattered, but everything was always very short-lived. And, and he didn't really want to have, he'd love to have conversations about all kinds of things, but if the conversation turned to the things of God, quite honestly, he'd tell me he was bored and he didn't want to talk about it, and he'd get up and leave or turn the, radio up so that it would drown me out or whatever, but he would dismiss me. If it was the things of God, there was very little of that. Very few times that we ever opened our Bibles together or really prayed together. Most of the praying together happened in front of other people because it looked right. He wasn't the real deal. And the foundation of our marriage was not Jesus. And what held us together wasn't the Lord. It was other things. And somebody coming home, so it's gonna get noisy in here. So I got to get on with this. Anyway, it was tough, and there were times when I literally would be crying somewhere alone by myself, heartbroken, because I so desperately wanted a godly marriage. I wanted to have that husband that I could share the things of the Lord with. And as time went on, after we hit the 30-year mark, I was kind of like, well, it's not going to happen, and I need to just accept that, because things were really going south by that point, and he was involved in some very, very ungodly things, even more so than he had been in the past. And our whole marriage was just taking this whole other turn. And I thought all hope was lost. I thought, I would never have that. And then one day, he left me. He just, told me he was done and didn't want to be married to me anymore, and he left. And, and it was heartbreaking to me, but I suppose if I could thank that man for anything now, I'd probably thank him for leaving, because even though it was hard then, and I went through some things, and it wasn't a great experience by any means, but what God was able to do in me, getting me out from under that bondage to where I could really hear from him and really begin to grow in things, it's been amazing. And I thought I wanted to be married again because I didn't know how not to be married. I'd been married since I was 18, and I didn't, I kept having people tell me I couldn't make it on my own, and all. Turns out they were very wrong. I did really well on my own, actually. Wasn't that bad. And in fact, it was pretty awesome in some ways, but it was lonely. And so I thought, well, I would want to remarry. But the men that I was meeting that were, I guess potential husbands, wasn't what I was looking for, and wasn't really any better than what I'd just come out of. So I had come to a point where I told the Lord, I'm not looking anymore. I may just be lonely. It may just be you and me, and it'll be lonely, Lord, but I'll be okay as long as I've got you. And it's not lonely with Jesus. But anyway, I just didn't know that yet. So I told the Lord, unless you bring, because here's what I want in a husband. You already know, and I want first for you to be the most important thing in his life, and then me second. And I said, so unless you bring a man to me, set him down in front of me and say, here, this one, marry him. I'm not doing it. And so I resolved to that, and it was a hard shift in me, but I was willing to do it. And so after I had done that and complete surrender in that, the Lord introduced me to Marvin. And then the Lord told me, this one, marry him. So we did end up getting engaged a few months later, because everything I was hearing, he was hearing the same thing from God, only for him. Here, this one, marry her. And and he was a great friend. I really enjoyed talking to him and stuff, and he did really love the Lord. And, but the thing that was going on the moment that I realized I was falling in love with this man was actually he had started to pray. We were talking on the phone. We lived 3,000 miles apart. We had met through grandchildren that we had in common, not on the internet. I'm not that kind of girl. And so I wasn't going to meet anybody that way, that's for sure. But the Lord introduced us through some of our grandchildren that we had in common. And so we would talk every day. From the day we first met, that our one grandson started calling on the phone and got us to talk to each other. We've talked every day since then. And that's been 13 years, I think. Yeah, it'll be 13 years in March. So, when we ended up getting engaged later that summer, I told him I want to be engaged for a year because I want to go through a whole year's worth of things with you. And I think if we're not hearing God, if we've misunderstood something, we'll know in that time frame. And, and then we each have an out, no hard feelings or anything, but let's be sure, because I don't want to be back in a bad marriage. Well, he felt the same, and agreeing to that year, wasn't a problem for him, or he said it wasn't, and he never acted like it was. I don't believe it was a problem. We did fine. We got to know each other better. We talked about how we wanted our marriage to be, made agreements like to never fight, and we've held to that, not to be cruel to each other and angry with each other, to be able to overlook whenever we were offended by the other one, because in love we would never purposely offend the other one. And we have, we'll have been married 12 years in July, and yep, we have held to that, and it's been a really awesome marriage. But this particular night, he was here in Delaware, and I was out in Washington State, and we were talking on the phone, and his grandson, which is the one that lives with us now, he was here for the weekend, and he said, he goes, just give me a minute. I need to go pray with him before he goes to sleep. And so I'm like, okay. Well, he still had his phone with him, so I could hear what was going on. And so I could hear this little boy, because I don't remember if I'd met him yet. But anyway, I could hear his grandson, saying his little prayer. And then Marvin, then he goes to pray. And he starts, and he goes, Father. And then he prays. And the way he said Father, the intimacy and connection that he had as he said that word, I literally felt my heart kind of flop over. And I'm like, oh, I am in love with this guy. It was a prayer. It was him. It wasn't just a prayer. It was the connection, the realness of it, and the intimacy, the real intimacy that he had with God, that I could hear in just one word as he approached the throne, that caused my heart to fall for him. And this morning, this isn't the first time I've caught him like this, but every time I do, I just fall a little more in love with him, because I don't care how much money he makes. I don't care what he looks like, or how physically fit he is, or what gifts he might give me, or none of that matters like that relationship that he has with the Lord. That's the part that is attractive to me, that he and I are best friends, that we can sit down and we can talk for hours about the Lord without even, having totally lost track of time and not realizing that all this time has passed. And we've just been having this conversation. That is the beauty of it. That is the strength in my husband that makes me feel loved and secure with him. That is the most important part of the good husband that he is. And like I said, I'm not the only woman out there that feels this way. I have women that contact me through this channel when they hear me talk about Marvin, and they'll say, I've always wanted that kind of a marriage. Will you pray for me, for God to send me a husband that's like that loves him, and that we can sit and talk about the things of God, that we can pray together, that we can seek God's wisdom when we're trying to make decisions. And I'm always like, absolutely, yes, I will pray for you for a minimum of 40 days. And down goes their name in my prayer journal, and for a husband, and whatever else that the Lord may lay on my heart. But yes, you see, there's this thing in us as daughters of God that long to be married to a true man of God. Not somebody that just shows up on Sunday and looks the part and sounds the part, but in the privacy of their own home. See, that I had that. That was my first marriage. The show was there for everybody else. But when we went home, it was a whole different thing. A whole different thing. So, you want to be a good husband? Be a man after God's heart. Have a connection with God, a real relationship that is solid and intimate and sincere and consistent. Same behind closed doors as you're out in public. You want to be a good father? Then you be that godly father for your children and raise them up knowing the things of God. Letting your daughters know that this is the kind of man you need to be married to. Doesn't matter what kind of job he has. Doesn't matter what possessions he has. Doesn't matter what he looks like. But his heart, because see, the body grows old and jobs go away and possessions wear out. But the heart of a man who trusts in the Lord will not fail. Lead by example. Teach your sons this is the kind of man that you need to grow up to be. Don't be the man that says, do as I say, not as I do. Oh no. Live that example for them. It's so important. My dad, he was living with us when he died, and we're right at, tomorrow's the anniversary of when my daddy passed. My dad was I always caught him having time with God. And every night before I'd go to bed, probably without fail, I don't remember ever going to kiss my dad goodnight that he wasn't sitting there, lying in bed, or sitting in his chair with the Word of God open, praying, reading through that Word. My dad, I could sit and talk with him for hours about the Lord. All my life, my dad was never bored talking about the things of God, and he always directed me back to God's heart. My mom did too. This morning, I'm going to try and take a picture and leave it as the thumbnail on this video. But there is a picture behind our kitchen table, and it is my great-grandfather, my dad's grandfather, who was a real honest-to-goodness circuit-riding preacher back in the day, rode horseback from town to town to preach, and then he was a pastor at their little local church for years too, and associate pastor, and I don't know, Grandpa and Grandma were very involved with the Lord. But every time I was 16 before he died, and so I knew him well, and every time we would go to his house, back when Grandma was still living and even after she died, he was always sitting at his desk, reading the Word and praying. And we'd be like, oh, we didn't mean to interrupt you. He's like, it's no interruption. I'll just go right back. When you go home, I'll be right back. It's like, I don't know if he ever did anything else. He loved spending time with God, and it was real. And this picture is a portrait because it was, we knew he wasn't going to probably live. He was well into his 90s and he probably wouldn't live much longer. And so they wanted, well, they could, they had a portrait done of him. And so it's him sitting at a desk or a table, and he's got his Bible open, and I think he's got his hand up, if I remember right, because that's the way it always was when he was reading. And there's the loaf of bread and stuff. Anyway, it's just, I treasure it. We were all given that portrait for Christmas when he passed away, and I have always kept mine. I even have I might not have my mom's anymore because I might have sent that to, I had some nieces and nephews that were looking for some things, so I might have sent that one to them. I can't remember, or I've got it. But this one, Marvin was talking about it, and he said, I never knew him, this great-grandfather of yours. He goes, but I get comfort with this behind me here, as that example by the table. And he goes, wherever we live, I always want that to hang by our table. And I'm like, I do too. So the table we used to have there was the table that was that great-grandfather's dining room table, and we had it. Now, it is since, because it was well over 100 years old, and it since was on the verge of collapse and had been repaired so many times, I don't think we could repair it anymore. So it ended up going to its final resting place, but grew up around that table at their house. And then when he moved into assisted living, my mom and dad had that table, and so I continued to grow up around that table. And then years later, when my kids were little, my mom and dad passed that table on to me, and now it's run the gamut of its life, because those things don't last forever. But and it's been a well-used, well-loved table. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to share some of this with you today, because I'm hoping that there are more men out there that really see the value of their relationship with Jesus. And I want you to know that relationship that you have with Jesus, it goes further than you. It reaches into the hearts of your wives, your children. And when I say wives, I mean multiple husbands, not a husband with multiple wives. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. So it reaches into your hearts, your wife's heart, and the hearts of your children. And eventually your grandchildren, and maybe even your great-grandchildren. All right, with that, I'm going to go. You have a very blessed day. I love you all. I'm praying for you. Pray for me, pray for Marvin, and I'll talk to you again real soon.